Thank you very much. Up there we have Chris and Tim from Commvault talking about cloud hybrid strategy. So grab a seat and listen up. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Alright, so my name is Chris Gondek and I have with me here my colleague Tim Ray. I am 20% confused, 16% angry and 12% happy. I'm very pleased to announce that I'm 100% male. That was important to me. And very disappointed to say that I have a 100% false beard and 100% false mustache. I am facially hair challenged. I'm of Eastern European descent, and this is the only hair on my body. That's it. I will never grow a beard, I'll never grow a mustache. It's very sad. But anyway, thank you all for sticking around and hearing from us from Commvault. Like I said, my name is Chris Gondek. I've been with Commvault for about 6 years. I also have my colleague here, Tim Ray. I'll let him introduce himself.
So Tim Ray, I'm a pre-sales engineer at Commvault, so I'm 2 months in, so I'm still drinking from the fire hose, so to speak.
So we've got Tim in the hot seat tonight. He's basically 2 months at Commvault. He's the expert, so I'm going to let him do most of the talking. But can I get a show of hands from anyone who was here in the June session, who's seen me ramble on before? Perfect, only a few of you. So only a few of you will be bored for the first 5 minutes. But basically what I wanted to do is, our first session was a journey to the cloud with Commvault. It pretty much was us explaining how we are relevant. And I'm going to go through that again in a very brief period just to kind of reset the scene. But basically, a long story short, I got to the point of, you're a backup company, right? If I think Commvault, I think backup company. And this is the slide that I put up last time. Absolutely, we are known for being a backup company. And if you follow any of the industry validators such as Gartner or Forrester, in fact, that's actually last year's one. We're in the same position in the 2017 quadrant. I wanted to put the Amazon quadrant and the Commvault quadrant, the backup and recovery quadrant as well as the public cloud quadrant next to each other to show that we're absolutely leaders in this space. And one of the things that we share with Amazon is for as long as they've been doing magic quadrants in those respective quadrants for public cloud infrastructure as a service and enterprise backup and recovery, we've held the #1 position for the last, well, now 7 years running. I don't think there's any other 2 vendor combinations that have held the top spot for that many years in a row. So, how is Commvault relevant to cloud? Just for everyone who wasn't here in June. This is basically what our customers are coming to us with in terms of the challenges they face when they're either starting or halfway through or even a very mature cloud adoption journey. In that, cloud adoption creates data silos. Now, today's session we're talking about a hybrid cloud strategy, and we think that hybrid is going to be the norm for some time for a lot of enterprises and organizations. We do recognize that full cloud maturity is adopting a proper DevOps culture and re-architecting or creating applications to be born in the cloud, to use the elasticity, to use the serverless architecture and all the other great features that Amazon gives you. In the meantime, there's a whole bunch of on-premise infrastructure that is effectively the mode 1 stuff that's keeping the lights going. Now, businesses understand they want to get there. They want to get out to the hyperscale, to the software as a service solutions and maybe even managed service providers. But what that does is create data silos. And I've actually put here quite aptly, what is your real estate and what's not your real estate? What you're effectively left with, what's the only asset that remains yours, the only intelligence, is your data. And your data is still very much your responsibility, no matter where you put it. And this is kind of what keeps CIOs awake at night. So when they come to us and say, yes, actually, this is exactly what we're experiencing. We've got some shadow IT activity where people are pushing workloads out here. And so, what is Commvault? In a nutshell, very, very quickly, we are 3 distinct capabilities or 3 distinct layers within our single data platform. We've been around for 20 years. We're a purely software company. We've organically grown through no acquisition. And it all started with this, the single scalable dynamic index. This spreads itself across multiple different environments, multiple different clouds, multiple different infrastructures. And this is what helps you to know your data, know the source, what type it is, who created it, who does it belong to, how long will it exist, what kind of security elements does it fall under. We then take it to a next level with our single virtual repository. What that means is we know you're going to move workloads. Some into AWS, some you might stay on-prem in VMware, some might stay in the Exchange and SQL environments, and other structured and unstructured and semi-structured data environments. So that single virtual repository allows you to pull all of that data together virtually, to have access to it, and use it for various reasons. Now, as these environments grow and scale, you need a management and operations layer to provide some automation, orchestration, and provisioning to deal with this growth, and to be able to provide all of these services up here: protection, access, compliance, sharing data, across what we call the infrastructure evolution, or for some it's a revolution, right? We went from physical to virtual to mobile and private and hybrid up to public clouds and SaaS and serverless architecture. What's going to remain for some organizations is nothing but the data. Infrastructure will be completely abstracted from it, but it still lends itself to the same needs of retention, risk, compliance, etc. So when you apply that single index, we can see all of the data everywhere. When you apply the virtual repository, so yes, we're encouraging you to do this. Adopt cloud, adopt public cloud for the reasons that you want to adopt public cloud. It's elasticity, it's costs, it's economies of scale. And when you put it there, use the native tool sets, use EBS snapshots, use S3 buckets, use Glacier. We encourage you to. In fact, it's built into the product. So I might be on-prem here protecting VMware and converting virtual machines up into the AWS cloud, and I will give you an ongoing protection mechanism. I'll move the data back and between all these other environments. When it comes to serverless architecture and SaaS solutions, we're an open data platform. We reverse it around. We have these environments sending data to us because we have no infrastructure to put ourselves into, but we still provide those services. So in a nutshell, that is Commvault, a data and information management software scalable solution. So one of my most key important messages when I go out and speak to engineers and cloud architects, some of you who were here in June, you would have remembered one of the slides I put up was that Dilbert comic, where Dilbert managers come in and goes, cloud strategy, move it all now. And Dilbert's like, well, does he know what he's talking about? We have a lot of customers and prospects that come to us and say, yes, we're being mandated all these cloud strategies. And we know that there's one end of the extreme spectrum where we adopt the DevOps culture, get a lot of very expensive engineers in and architect for the cloud specifically, to the other end of how do I start? And here's some of the areas that Commvault really help our customers realize or rationalize their cloud strategy. The first one, very easy, tick in a box, back up to the cloud and protect cloud-based workloads. Cloud started for me as infrastructure, as a service. Instead of using tape, I can start using S3. Instead of having an expensive DR data center, I can use the public cloud. We then moved to DR migration, so very intelligent, understanding workloads, their dependencies, security, identity and access management, and migrating that into a new target environment that might look slightly different. Does it have Active Directory? Do I need a certain VPC configuration? All those things we take into account. And then lastly, eliminate that lock-in with workload portability. What does workload portability really mean at the end of the day? Does it just mean I can just rip it out of one place and put it into the other and it will just magically work? What if I'm doing that for multiple environments simultaneously? That's what hybrid IT strategy is. I'm running in multiple different types of infrastructures with their own unique permutations of identity and access management and VM container types, their data protection capabilities. So specifically from an Amazon perspective, and this is very much a recap from June, I went into a bit of detail into these 4 areas. And I kind of went from front to back. Started talking about how we can back up to the cloud, then we protect cloud workloads, we integrate with EBS snapshots, and then we can do provisioning. And then, so I've turned it around the other way around now to kind of show the life cycle of data management in Amazon. And we've been doing this for 20 years, so we've been working very much with on-prem physical and virtual infrastructure. So we help you provision into the cloud. We help you drive those very quick point-in-time snapshots on EBS volumes. Then lifecycle the data out to the appropriate tiers of storage for the appropriate retention based on your business needs. So today, I'm not going to hog the limelight. It's very much about my colleague Tim. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper into two specific areas where we've really helped our customers not just adopt cloud and get data moved into AWS for reasons such as DR, etc., but also understanding their data better. It's not just lifting and shifting entire workloads. What kind of intelligence can I run? What kind of analytics can I run against my data sets to ensure I'm moving the right data to the cloud? And the first area is around data insights. And you'll notice these two statements here. One of them is cloud won't do your mess for less. And the other one is don't take your sins to the cloud. We're very much having this conversation quite regularly as a lot of our customers and prospects have said, yes, cloud journey, we're on our way, we're doing this. We have 3 different third-party consultancies that are working around the clock, billing us significant amounts of money, telling us it's going to take 12 to 18 months to get this data up there. Because we're moving all of it. They don't even know what they're moving. They don't know what the data sets are. So before I hand over to Tim, I have a story to share as to why this is important. About 15 years ago, we had a very big customer who was who'd had to adhere to Australian health regulation and safety laws. It was a mining company. And because they were generating all this data, they went to the business and said, how much data should I keep? And no one wanted to draw the line in the sand and say, well, here's what you should retain and here's why. They just went, we don't know, keep everything forever. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, 15, 20 years ago, about 100 gig of data wasn't that much. Fast forward to today, they've got multiple hundreds of terabytes, close to petabytes of data. They have 300,000 tapes in an off-site facility, and it's costing them $70,000 a month to store those tapes. Now, why do we back up? Why do we keep data? For a lot of us technical people in the room, it's because we want to recover from data loss scenarios, ransomware attacks, system failures, end-user errors, right? If that was the only reason we ever had to back up, we'd only need last month's copy, and we'd be using our geo-redundancy to protect ourselves from logical and physical failures. But the bigger reason, or the biggest spend on retention, is the business reasons. Why does the business retain data? Compliance. So this particular company, they were told to keep all their data, and so then you think to yourself, all right, well, I'm keeping all this data because I'm told that I have to, but who's keeping track? Who knows that I'm keeping all this data? Maybe I don't, I'll just get away with it. But then it'll happen. An audit will come in from ACMA or someone like that, and it will be all right, here's an e-discovery request now. So they put the tender out and said, who can come in and perform this e-discovery against all that data? There's 300 tapes. 3 tender responses came in, and they ranged from around $750,000 to $1 million. The fine for not providing the data was $100,000. So you can kind of see now the stupidity of it, right? I'm paying 70 grand a month, 300,000 tapes, so that at some point if I get audited, I'll provide the information. I get audited and it's cheaper for me to pay the fine. So I didn't even have to keep all the data in the first place. This is why data insights are important. They're going to become increasingly important. And this is why you don't take your sins to the cloud with you. And your cloud won't do your mess for less magically. Remember, one of the only things that remains your asset, your responsibility, is your data, as more of it leaves the local on-premise real estate. So with that, I'll hand over to Tim.
Thanks, Chris. So data insights. So Gartner recently did a study to say that 70% of all data, specifically unstructured, represents no business value, right? So what that means is that we're keeping data and information that we don't need to, right? So when we talk about unstructured data and I guess non-business related information, we're talking games, videos, stuff that we don't need to keep. So I guess the idea of providing the insight and that visibility is to clean up your house before you move to the cloud. Move less data from your on-prem environments into AWS S3, or move to Glacier for long-term retention. Because that's the idea of having the insight into that information and making that transition from on-prem into AWS a bit more seamless. So at Commvault, so apologies, I'm still learning Commvault. As Chris said, I'm 2 months in, so I'm still coming up to speed with all the Commvault technology, but we have a couple of tools to go out and scan information on-prem and against all that unstructured content So we have a system tools which can go and scan metadata about all the files, so what file type it is, who the data belongs to, where it resides, and from there we can run reports based on the usage, the level of duplication, so on and so forth. So these are some of the reports that we can generate with Commvault to provide that insight into unstructured data. So we can see, I guess, the size of your files and the size of your data. Or we can also see stale information. So stale meaning when was data last accessed, when was it last modified. I guess a common scenario we see in customers' environments is that we've got all this data, hasn't been accessed, it's just on tier 1 storage on-prem, and it's got no kind of business value, just tying up resources, right? So a good candidate for stale data is to introduce some archiving. Archive that data, get it off your tier 1 storage, move it to something like S3, and that's something that we can do at Commvault, is we can optimize that process. We can do things like deduplication, we can compress from on-prem into S3, so we can optimize that whole process. Also, we can do what we call archive prediction, right? So we can put in a policy, an archiving policy, to say if we were to archive any data that's over 10 meg, for example, or hasn't been accessed in 90 days, we can see what the impact that will be from a storage perspective and also from a cost perspective. Right? So we can do those what if scenarios. Here's just a few other reports which we can run from Commvault and provide that visibility into the unstructured content. We can see when files were last accessed, when were they last modified, so you can get that visibility and insight. Also the size of files and the ranges. Also what file types I have. So again, you might find that there's game files, video files, stuff that you don't need to keep. Game of Thrones is a common one that we find when we do these types of scans. They're all over the file servers, and you have to back these up. You have to manage that, and also it's taking up space and taking up cost.
I've got the Game of Thrones season 7 somewhere on backup tapes.
License copy, right?
Yep.
So as you can see up here on method 1, if we didn't have visibility, all we're really doing is lifting and shifting the data from on-prem into AWS or into the cloud, right? That obviously can take some time. You don't know what you're migrating, and you're just shifting the problem from one place to another. So what I guess the best practice approach, and to make that journey more seamless for unstructured data on-prem into AWS, is to have that insight, have that visibility to understand what you have, where the data is, how it's being used, and then putting policies in place, which Commvault is all policy driven, to be able to archive data that hasn't been accessed, that stale data that has been accessed or modified, and move that from your on-prem into an S3 bucket, right? But when we move that, when we do that data movement, we're compressing and deduping, so we're optimizing that data transfer up to S3. And then we can tier it through into Glacier for even longer term retention, and maybe, for example, 7 years. Some customers need to keep 7-year retention of data, and this could also be used as a tape replacement. Obviously, tapes, I don't see many customers doing tape backup, or that can sort of increase costs doing tape-based backup. So this could be a tape replacement by putting that and storing that data into S3. So that's one use case that I've talked about, providing that data insight, moving only what you need into AWS. The second one is converting VMware, so converting VMware virtual infrastructures on-prem that you might have. We can back that up with Commvault, and we can replicate that up to AWS, to S3, and then we can do a conversion. So I guess the use cases associated with this feature is you might want to do a migration from VMware into AWS, or you might have some applications that you want to move up there. You can use this feature to do that for you. And we've had this feature for a couple of years, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
And there's some enhancements in this feature which I'll talk about now. So the old method of doing conversion from VMware into EC2, Amazon, is we would need to store the data to S3, to an S3 bucket first. We would then use AWS import, and then we would then convert that to an AMI, an Amazon AMI, and then boot up the VM. That's the conversion done. That took quite a while to do. So what we've done to enhance that process is to restore directly from backup storage in Amazon straight to EBS, and then boot the VM up from there. So it's much faster. So this is just a graphical view of how that process with the traditional approach, where we can copy the data from the backup storage in Amazon, would upload that to S3, and then we would then do the import, use the AWS import to convert that to an AMI image, and then into EC2. Now we just bypass, so I guess the previous process was a two-stage process. Now we just do a one-phase process to restore that data and convert that VMware image into AWS. Now this is just a bit of a performance benchmark that we did. So we had 10 VMware virtual machines, two VMDKs. The previous method, or the old method, took 12 hours to do. It was about 1 hour, 10 minutes per VM. With that new approach, by converting straight into EBS and doing the AMI conversion, it's now down to 2 hours, and it's about 30 minutes per VM. So much quicker to do that conversion process, and also to allow you to adopt AWS in a quicker fashion. I'll just quickly touch on this, but Live Browse is a feature in Commvault that we've had for a number of years now, where we can do single file recovery. So if we're backing up Exchange, if we're backing up VMware, we can back up or restore a complete VM, or we can do a single file recovery from that single backup. What Live Browse does in the context of Amazon is that we can perform an EBS snapshot, or we can leverage the EBS snapshot process and drive that through Commvault. Right? So, and the purpose behind that snapshot is to shorten your recovery time objective. So what Live Browse does in context of Amazon is we can mount that snapshot, or first of all run that snapshot, and then mount it, and then we can do a granular recovery at the file level out to the virtual machine. So we support this for Windows. We also support this for Linux as well. So we've got Linux and Windows VMs in EC2 that we can do a full VM restore or a single file restore. So on to the next use case. So as Chris mentioned, at Commvault we can leverage the cloud, or AWS specifically, for disaster recovery. So you might find that you might have a single on-prem data center, and your off-site backup strategy could be moving tapes off-site. That's how you get your data off-site. So if you have a disaster, then you've got your backup tapes elsewhere that you can bring on-site and obviously restore. That's probably not the best way of doing it, because that takes time, right? You have to get the tapes back, you have to restore the data, and that obviously takes time to restore. So what we can then do is, for a customer, is leverage the cloud, so replicate your data, so your mission critical data, up to Amazon, EBS, and use that as your recovery DR target. Okay? So that will shorten your recovery time objective if you have a disaster. So if your production on-prem site goes down, then all your mission critical data is now in Amazon that you can then restore and then convert, as I mentioned before, into EC2. Also, with this capability, we can reduce your cost around disaster recovery. If you have a dual data center, production, DR, most of the time your infrastructure at DR is pretty much doing nothing unless you have an actual disaster, right? So you've got all that idle infrastructure, compute, storage at that DR site, pretty much doing nothing. So what this capability can do and solve is reduce your DR on-prem costs. You can now replicate up to AWS and start doing things like on-demand DR or DR as a service, because when we do the actual DR recovery from on-prem into AWS, the EC2 compute layer is not powered on. We're only replicating to EBS storage. So Commvault, we have a feature called LiveSync, which we can replicate backups from on-prem, VMware, and then we can replicate that in an optimized fashion. So we do dedupe and compression up to EBS. From there, we can do that conversion, as I spoke about before, into EC2. So we can do the failover from production into Amazon. We can also do vice versa. So with Commvault, we can do migration. We'll help you with migrating workloads and applications to Amazon. Once you're there, we can then replicate back to on-prem, and that could be your DR target, so your destination, right? So if your application goes down in Amazon, or if your VM goes down, then you've got your data replicated back to your on-prem data center, right? So you have a bit of flexibility there. So we support both planned and unplanned. So planned, I guess, would be if you need to do some maintenance for your on-prem infrastructure or your on-prem applications. So you need a patch exchange or patch SQL. You can fail over your workloads because we're replicating the data in the back end up to Amazon. And once you fail over to Amazon, you can patch your on-prem workloads and applications. Once you've done the patching, then you can fail back.
Excuse me. Can I ask, are those EBS volumes, do you have to pre-warn them, or they lazy load, what's the performance like? So say you've done recovery, load EBS volume,
Yep.
and you attach it to those.
Yep.
But if you recover from a snapshot, you have to kind of read all the sectors, or in essence, like warm the volumes.
Yes.
What's the performance like in your method? Like, do you have to read every sector, or?
So I'll see if this is good. Testing? Yeah. So if I understand the question correctly, when you're talking about a disaster recovery into AWS, the data is being brought into the EBS volume. The EBS volume is brought online.
That rehydrating onto EBS volume, what's
Gotcha.
the performance like when you attach it? Like, do you have to then read the whole volume?
So we're talking about two different approaches here. I refer to it as reactive DR and proactive DR. Reactive DR is, I've been backing up my VMware virtual machines for some time, and at some point I go, I need to move that to AWS. I'm going to right-click Restore as AWS, and that process takes time to either replicate the data across to AWS and then restore out of AWS to an EBS volume. If we've thought about it and thought that at some point we want to do that into AWS, we can have the backup data there, sitting there idle, maybe in an S3IA bucket, and restore out of that to the EBS volume. That hot-add process that we were talking about speeds up that whole process.
So that's taken from S3IA
Yep.
onto EBS volume.
Yep.
You don't get the full right performance of that EBS volume until you've read every sector on that EBS volume.
So the streaming recovery from the S3IA to the EBS volume, that's the only time that takes, takes time.
Yeah.
Then you fire up the instance, that EBS volume is ready instantly. Now, proactive DR, what we're talking about here, live sync, is having that EBS volume already online. So it's not a, I'm reacting, I do a DR. It's, I know I'm replicating into an instance that's already been provisioned, that's online, that's trickle feeding the EBS volume, and we put an orchestration wrapper around the failover process. So it's like you have two systems simultaneously. A VMware virtual machine here running application, an Amazon EC2 instance on EBS there, receiving live replicas at a recovery point objective of every 15 minutes, for example. You hit the failover button, you're instant, effectively.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Is it like a two-phase commit? Is that what you're saying, Chris?
Take it.
It's like a two-phase commit between your primary side and your DR. Is that what you're saying? So that when the updates are applied to your primary, same thing.
You can set the replication schedule. So typically what our customers do is, if it's mission critical, you get down to the sub 1 hour RTO. Typically it's an overnight thing for some other customers. They can sustain, by the time they've identified something, and they want to do a failover. Sometimes we'll do an automated unplanned failover, so we'll do it for you, based on some kind of criteria when something goes offline. But yeah.
And it's more sort of focused at that sort of your mission critical kind of workloads. It's not for every workload and application that you have on-prem. It's just for your mission critical ones that you need to recover in the event of a DR, and you need to get up quickly. For example, an online banking system, a trading system, right? So you need to get kind of the...
And what is unique about this? Has anyone here got any VMware experience? Okay. And have you heard of VMware's Site Recovery Manager? So Site Recovery Manager was a way for VMware to replicate data stores from one site to another site. They had a lot of heavy dependencies. You have to have the same disk array at both sites, had to have the same array replication technology. It was a big bang approach. You could only do entire data stores at once. Because we're up at the VM layer, we can hand pick groups of individual VMs and have them replicate to EC2 instances and back again. That's the whole concept around here. Reactive and proactive DR with orchestration wrappers around it.
Okay. So this just shows a screenshot of the configuration for LiveSync, where we can choose the destination up here on the right here. So if you want to go from on-prem VMware, replicate that workload into Amazon as the destination, you can. You can also do the vice versa. So if you have workloads in Amazon, we can obviously protect that via a backup. But if you have a mission-critical application with a low RPO, RTO, then we can use LiveSync to replicate back to on-prem. So if you have a disaster or if S3 goes offline in AWS, we can then recover back to on-prem. Just another screenshot here where we can go and choose the virtual machines that we want to LiveSync. Again, do that replication from VMware on-prem into AWS. So it's all GUI driven, it's all wizard driven, so it's pretty much next, finish.
And you can see the settings there, availability zone, Amazon options. So we're taking a virtual machine that was protected on VMware and we're sending it out to Amazon, understanding Amazon specific settings for EC2 and EBS.
So I think I've talked about this, but yeah, in terms of the recovery, we can do planned. So if you want to do maintenance, unplanned is when you actually have a disaster. So your production, DC that goes down, then we can use Commvault to recover those applications from on-prem into DR and bring them up. Because we're doing that replication in the background every 1 hour or 30 minutes. We have the data there in Amazon ready to go. All we need to really do is migrate and that recovery, and Commvault will automate and orchestrate that process for you, as opposed to doing it manually. So just in a bit of a screenshot in a GUI, so we can do the planned failover or unplanned. If you're doing a planned failover, again for maintenance, then we power up the VM that's powered off. We do a final backup to capture any change that's happened, and then we bring up the VM at the Amazon DR site. So that's our recovery target. Unplanned, bit similar, but we can't run a final backup at prod because that site is down. But again, Commvault will do the orchestration for you, recover everything in Amazon from on-prem, because we've got all the data there. Also, Failback. If you find that you have a disaster in prod, use Commvault to recover in Amazon. Then production comes back online. We can then fail back to on-prem as well, so we can go back.
This is one of those features where a lot of customers come to us and say, well, this might not be the best forum for it, but cloud exit strategy. I can get all my data into the cloud and start consuming cloud. What happens if I need to take it out for whatever reason? We'll bring it back on-prem. This whole concept of failback, this is what true workload portability is. Workload portability isn't just getting to the cloud, it's getting between clouds and out of the cloud as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, I guess the other use case for this is we can recover from one region to another region in AWS as well. Right? So it's not, you don't have to go back to on-prem. If you're in the cloud, and you can leverage another cloud as a DR target. So when you restore back, we can restore in place back to prod, or we can restore out of place. So we can restore to a different ESX environment, a different data store. So you have some options there. We can also do a backup. So if we're replicating an application from prod into AWS, instead of doing a backup of prod, we can do the backup of the VM in DR. So it's kind of an off-host backup for the application.
This is significantly important because when we think about that picture of what's my real estate and what's not my real estate, a lot of organizations will come to you and say, I'll get you to the cloud. And then you're there and you think, cloud's taking care of everything for me, right? Remember, your data is still your responsibility, even in the cloud. So an ongoing cloud-based workload protection mechanism, application consistency, granular recovery from EBS snapshots, all of that is part of the ongoing single platform Commvault solution. Yes?
So you talk about sort of putting it out to VMware. Can you then sort of put it into Azure virtual machines hypothetically? Like some clients I work with are like, oh, we're worried about some locking. And
Correct.
they're kind of like, well, we've got these critical workloads that we'd like to maybe move to another access provider.
Absolutely. And look, that's what the hybrid cloud strategy is all about, or hybrid IT. meaning that I could be running on-prem and private cloud, virtual infrastructure, still running maybe physical servers, multiple different public cloud environments or hyperscale environments, as well as software as a service solutions. Some of my data might end up there, like Office 365 and things like that. Absolutely. We capture the data. Once it's in our platform, we make it portable. We can convert it and send it from any source to any destination.
And GCA as well? Sorry? Google as well?
Well, come and talk to us. This is an AWS User Group. So we have a whole number of different providers. Amazon is by far our most mature capability. It was the first public cloud provider that we started with. So a lot of what we do in terms of integration-wise with a lot of the AWS capabilities are the most mature from a Commvault perspective.
We can also do things like power management in Amazon. So if you run Commvault in AWS, we can power up and power down Commvault infrastructure to reduce your EC2 costs as well. So,
yeah. So that's pretty much the end of our presentation. I don't know if you got any of those little cards there with potentially win a selfie drone. If you haven't had a chance, you've got a couple of seconds now while I just talk about this last slide. And I do believe you share the content out with the users.
Yes, we do.
So what we have here is two things. One is called the Commvault Cloud Architecture Guide. So if you're a cloud architect or are considering adopting public cloud infrastructure for backup and recovery capability, Commvault capability, etc. This architecture guide isn't just step 1, 2, 3 on how to deploy our software and our features. It's very much about what kind of design considerations do I have to take into account. If I want to move workloads from off-prem into the cloud, how can I seed that data, even with deduplication? What kind of pipe will I need? Will I need direct connect? What kind of VPC setup? What kind of building blocks should I deploy and what type of VC2 instances? We absolutely take all that into account. Using Snowmobile, using Snowball, the on-prem devices that you can get from Amazon to move bulk workloads of data up into the cloud, we absolutely support that. So highly recommend you take a look at the Cloud Architecture Guide. There's a lot there for cloud architects that goes above and beyond just simple config. And then we've also got a YouTube channel, Commvault YouTube channel, has a lot of very short videos around, if you want to get that tick in the box, if you haven't started your cloud journey and you want to maybe switch off backups to tape and start backing up to S3 as an example, watch this 2-minute video. You can get up and running very quickly with a couple of free trials, right up through to I want to deploy and protect workloads in Amazon, maybe even run some of our data insights, the system discovery and archive analyzer tool on semi-structured, unstructured data on-prem and in the cloud. So with that, I'll draw the lucky winner.
How many people here are still backing up to tape? One?
Iron Mountain.
Yeah. Iron Mountain? Two? There must be more. I mean your company, not you specifically, but your organisation is backing up to tape. Yeah.
All right, do we have a Gerald Backelmeyer? Gerald, congratulations.
Hey!
You have won yourself a selfie drone. Congratulations.
Selfie drone.
There you can
yourself.
take it. Oh,
It's all about the presentation.
thanks, mate. All right, look, on behalf of myself and Tim and everyone at Commvault, thank you very much for your attention.